Here's a look at the state test reference sheet for 8th grade. You guys will be given a copy of this right before you take the state test. And so I just wanted to show you a couple of things that you can use this for. There's some conversions in the top section. So if you're asked to convert like a kilogram to grams, you would multiply it by 1,000. So there's a bunch of conversions up there. And what we're going to focus on today is this bottom box here, which are all of the formulas for volume. Volume of a cylinder, a pyramid, a sphere, and a cone. So on the state test, if you are asked to find volume of a three-dimensional shape, you would just use these formulas and input your information. It's important to know what each shape looks like. A cylinder is like a soup can or a can of pop, so that's what a cylinder looks like. And the formula of a cylinder is volume equals pi times the radius squared times the height. A pyramid is right here, has a pointy top, like the pyramids in Egypt. To find the volume of a pyramid, it's 1/3 the area of the base times the height. A sphere is like a basketball. And to find the volume of a sphere is 4/3 times pi times the radius to the third power, or radius cubed. And the final shape is the cone. And like an ice cream cone, it's 1/3 times pi times the radius squared times the height. So you do not have to memorize the volume formulas. They're going to be on the reference sheet for you. So I wanted to show you how to use the formulas. So suppose you had a state test question about a cylinder. Now here's an example question. A candle in the shape of a cylinder has the dimensions shown. What is the volume in cubic inches of the candle, and round your answer to the nearest hundredths? So you would grab your reference sheet and you would, on your scratch paper, you would write down the formula, and then you would input the information into the formula. So here, volume is pi. R is the radius. Now the radius is this from half of the circle, the center to the edge. So in this diagram, the whole way across the diameter is 5. We need the radius, so we would have to cut the 5 in half. So I would do pi times 2.5 squared times the height. So how tall it is the height. So times 8. Now my advice when you're solving these is to save the pi for last, just like if it's dessert or dinner. Save your pi for the end. So I would first do 2.5 squared times 8. So 2.5 times 2.5 times 8 is 50. So 50 pi could be one of the answers. Since this one says to round to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to go ahead and multiply 50 times pi. But sometimes it'll ask for your answer in terms of pi, so we could be done right there. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to do 50 times the value of pi, which is 3.14. So when I multiply that, I get a volume of 157 when I use just 3.1 for pi, 3.14 for pi. So I'm not going to have to round it to the nearest hundredths place. If I use the pi button on the calculator, I do get 157.079, and it goes on. So then in this case, I would have to round to the hundredths place. So this 9 would make the 7 go up to an 8. So my final answer would be 157.08. and that is if I use the pi button. So either one, all of these answers would be correct, 50 pi or 157 or 157.08. Oh, and by the way, the cylinder will be the most commonly used question. It has been in the past on the state test, so this would be the one that we'd want you to get really good at solving. The second most commonly used volume question on the state test is the cone. So hopefully you can identify that, and sometimes it'll just say it's a cone with a radius of 3 inches and a height of 18 inches. One thing I wanted you to know, that fraction 1/3, you could write the formula like this: pi r squared h, and then divide that all by 3. So you could, to handle the 1/3, you could just divide that value by 3. So let's go ahead and look at what we have in the picture and substitute in. Let's save our pi for last. And our radius is halfway across the circle, which is what they gave us in the picture. So it's pi times 3 squared times the height of 18. So we'll find all of that and then divide it by 3. Okay. So I'm going to go... So if I saved my pi for last and I did pi times... Let's see, 9 times 18 is 162, and then divide that by 3. We're going to get 54 pi. So this could be a possible answer, 54 pi. Or we can go ahead and do 54 times 3.14. Which is 169.56. I want to check if I use the pi button to see what happens. If I use the pi button, I get that irrational number, 169.646, . Well, this one said to round to the nearest integer, so that means we round to just the whole number. So either way, that number behind the decimal is greater than 5. So I would round this to 170 for my final answer. Okay, so you input, you calculate, and you just ask how they want it, the final answer, how you should round. Okay, another shape on your formula sheet is the pyramid. So it's our formula here. Again, that 1/3 means you would divide it by 3. So it's the area of the base times the height and divide it by 3. So that capital B in the formula means the area of the base. So you want to identify that first. So look at this base right here. That's a rectangle. How do you find the area of a rectangle? Length times width. So we would have to do the area of the base, which is a rectangle, so length times width, so 10, 8 times 10, and then multiply that by the height, which is to the point, to the tippy top there, which is 6. So we'd calculate all of that and then divide by 3. So let's go ahead and do that. 8 times 10 times 6, and then divide that by 3. So that gives us 160. So the answer here, 160, and they've already labeled it for us, volume cubed. So it's three-dimensional figure, so our exponent is a 3. It's 3D, it's to the 3rd power. Okay, and the final shape is a sphere. You may be asked to calculate the volume of a sphere. So if it's a ball, a three-dimensional figure like that, you're going to use this formula right here. So you'd write the formula down. Now 4/3, you could do 4 times pi times the radius cubed, and then you can divide it all by 3 if that helps with that fraction. Again, I'm going to save my pi for last. So 4 times pi times the radius. So the radius in the picture, it's from the center of the circle to the edge. So in this case, it's 3 to the third power. That means 3 times 3 times 3. And then you're going to divide that answer by 3. So saving my pi for last, I'm going to do 4 times 3 times 3 times 3 and divide that by 3. And that gives me 36 pi. Now, if they ever ask to have your answer in terms of pi, we would be done. So that's what in terms of pi looks like. You just leave your answer just like this. Then we could, if they do tell you to round and not have your answer in terms of pi, then I would do 36 times 3.14, or I could use the pi button. So if I use 3.14, I get 113.04 units cubed. If I use just the pi button on the calculator, that gives you a irrational number that just continues on. So that in case you'd have to round, and this one doesn't specify. So all 3 of these answers would be correct. You can leave it in terms of pi and just leave the pi symbol, leave the pi for last in your calculation, or go ahead and multiply by 3.14 or use the pi button. Okay, so if you are asked to find volume of any three-dimensional shape, you have all of these formulas in your hand, and we're going to practice using them.